I interviewed one of my longest standing clients who, after 30 years in business, very successful, very well respected. After the lockdown and a few months later, he was like, my staff like this, I like this, the clients like this, and he's completely gone virtual. Instead of being in gridlock on that highway, on your way to work, rushing to get to a client meeting, he's sitting at the kitchen table with his lovely wife, having a cup of coffee, enjoying their time together. He said, I wouldn't change what I've got now for anything.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Answering Legal's Everything Except the Law podcast. I am your host, Nick Werker. If this is your first time tuning in, this is the podcast where we share expert advice on all the parts of running a law firm that attorneys weren't exactly trained for back in law school. Now, over the past few years, we've seen COVID-19 impact just about every aspect of the lawyer's job. I don't mean to laugh, but including the way that they interact with clients, how they go about marketing, and even where they work from. Fortunately, there are experts out there like our guest today to help attorneys keep up with the rapidly changing legal world. Our guest is a top lawyer business coach who you may know from his company, OnTrac Coaching. He's also written a book called Growing a Law Practice During COVID-19, which we'll be diving into today. Gary Mitchell is here. Gary, thanks for joining the show.
Nice to be here, Nick. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's jump into it. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your path to becoming a lawyer coach?
It's an interesting path. Anyone who I know that's in legal marketing or legal management, it's not like you woke up one day and said, I'm going to work for law firms. First started when I was 25. I started my first business, and that was marketing, media, promotion, event management. I spent many years in communications and marketing roles, and then many more years in politics. Culminating in running for Parliament in 2004. And thank goodness I lost. Anyway, the following election, I was approached by a lawyer candidate, and he was really green. Like, if you look at this painting behind me, it would have been blank. If I was the painter, it would have been a blank canvas, which was awesome. A fantastic guy, two master's degrees, right? Like, highly intellectual, really bright guy, but just no political experience. So I coached him on all the soft skills, meeting people, speaking, media relations. He ended up becoming an amazing candidate. And I won't take all the credit for this because he was like a sponge. He trusted me, he took my advice, he followed it, and he grew. And I have to say, Nick, it was a life-altering moment. I'd been the person out front most of my life, and here I am now, the person behind the person. And to be able to watch him and grow and thrive because of my experience was incredible. It was incredible. And at that point, one of his best friends, a lifelong friend, another lawyer, said to me, Gary, you really have an ability to work with highly intellectual people. And you should take a look at the legal industry. Lawyers really need help with marketing and business development. They don't get it in law school. Very few firms do enough to properly prepare them for it, yet they demand the ability to do it. And at that point, Nick, my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, really? Law firms? Really? And I had no experience, no background in law. So I embarked on about 9 months of research throughout North America, both in person and online, and to see what was going on. Not only was there a need, but who was out there? Were there people fulfilling this need? And it was really interesting. And very serendipitously, the first chapter of the Legal Marketing Association outside of the United States was formed in Vancouver, where I normally work from. And I went to the first meeting and I met some legendary, and I'm not kidding, legendary legal marketers from the US who became friends, we're friends to this day. Was one of the forming members of the chapter. Within a few months, I'm on the board of directors. Within another few months, I'm getting my first article published. and I haven't looked back. It's been an amazing journey.
Wow. All of that just from coaching one candidate. But you know what? When you find the thing that you're good at, it's hard to stay away, right? It's
And that you love. I mean, I love this. This is the longest job that I've ever had, and I truly love it. It's fantastic to work with these people.
yeah, I totally get it because my plan was, I'm going to stay in school. I actually wanted to go to law school, so I'm finishing up my degree. I had just started dating the woman who's now my wife, and this company offered me a job. I'm like, hey, I'll stick it out for a couple of years, pay for school, go to law school, and then I'll really like start my life. And I just got addicted to like helping lawyers,
Yeah.
And doing all the stuff that we're talking about.
It's
But
fun.
it's
Fun.
it's been, well, now I'm here. I think it's almost 8 years. I don't even know anymore. Time is flying. COVID counts as like 4, so it should really
Yeah,
be
I know.
12.
It's like time is. Woo.
Yeah, we spend this much time inside, So speaking of that, I want to talk about your book. And so can you tell me a little bit about the inspiration behind your book, Growing a Law Practice During COVID-19, and some of the challenges that you wanted to help attorneys really overcome in writing this book?
Certainly, Nick. Well, I have to say the main inspiration for writing the book was some of the lawyers that I was working with early 2020, then as COVID hit and we were in lockdown, and throughout the rest of the year. I sat down to write this book in November 2020 and handed in the manuscript about the middle of January 2021. But one lawyer comes to mind, and she has to be by far the most courageous lawyer I've ever had the pleasure of working with. 6 days before we go into lockdown, we have a consultation. And she's telling me 6 weeks prior to that consultation, she had taken a very large leap of faith. She moved from a small boutique firm as an equity partner, very comfortable, liked everyone at the firm, had no responsibility for business development. The way the workflow came in, she didn't have to worry about bringing any work in herself. And she was offered this position at a national firm, and with a mandate to not only grow her own practice, but grow a practice group, never having done any business development. And I was like, wow. So 6 days after our consultation, we're all in lockdown. And Nick, over the years, I've helped a lot of attorneys move from one firm to another. It's a very daunting task. It's almost like going out on your own. Everything's new partners, new culture, new everything. And that's challenging in normal times when you're actually going to the bricks and mortar office and meeting people face to face, right? And here she's going to be doing this now, because that's why she hired me for the transition program, which I know we'll be speaking about later. And I'm like, okay, this was a new one for me too as a coach. How do I help you transition to your new firm when you're not even at the office, right? Oh, there's one more thing. Single mom with 2 young girls. And she'd never worked from home before. I swear to God, all of these things would normally pile up and you'd say, no way she's going to make it. 2 years later, she was in the top 40 in the country. Wow. For her practice area. And she's now being groomed to be the national practice group leader. That by far inspired me beyond anything. There were several other lawyers that I worked with that year going out on their own. Actually, a couple went out on their own in January, right? So many things were happening that none of us knew this was coming, right? And so people made decisions, made changes in January, which is very typical, right? Coming into a new year, a lot of people will say, I think I'm going to make a change. And then boom, the hammer comes down, right? So basically, it was the inspiration of the clients I was working with. And where I wanted to help is kind of connect the dots from where it used to be to where it is now. Not knowing, of course, no one knew, that 2 years later, as we're talking, we're still in it. Like I'm shaking my head. I think most of us in the world are shaking our heads. We're still in it. And so, yeah, we'll talk about marketing and we'll talk about few other things, but the most incredible or additional content I have in the book, and also my app, which we're going to get to, is mindset and self-care. We all know how stressful the legal industry is on lawyers, on management, paralegals, all staff. It's a very, very stressful industry with a lot of demands coming from all directions. And then COVID hits. Wow. So I wanted to give the reader or the participant in the case of the app, all the information that I could do to help them navigate this new way, right? And little did I know when I handed in that manuscript that we're still in it.
We're talking about working from home, right? And kind of like the virtual commute or the virtual the work day. And the idea of like a virtual law practice is something that's being embraced by more and more attorneys now. So are there any tips that you have for those who are currently running their firm virtually, or who are looking maybe to make a transition or maybe even start a virtual law firm?
Well, it's an interesting question because my next article going in is called The COVID-19 Law Firm Going Virtual. As a part of that article, I interviewed one of my longest standing clients who, after 30 years in business, very successful, very well respected. After the lockdown and a few months later, he was like, my staff like this, I like this, the clients like this, and he's completely gone virtual and more successful now than ever after 30 years. And as he pointed out, from a lifestyle point of view, instead of being in gridlock on that highway, pick the highway of your choice anywhere in North America, on your way to work, rushing to get to a client meeting, he's sitting at the kitchen table with his lovely wife, having a cup of coffee, enjoying their time together. And he said to me, Nick, he said, remember, Gary, 7 years ago, we were working together and I wanted to become a judge. And that was his ultimate goal, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal for a lot of lawyers. That's the epitome of the legal profession. He said, I wouldn't change what I've got now for anything. The freedom, the clients are happy because they're not commuting. The staff are happy because they're not commuting. He's happy, no one's commuting. Everybody's working from home. He got rid of his bricks and mortar, and it's an incredible story because I've known this guy. Now keep in mind, Nick, this is one of the most entrepreneurial lawyers I've ever come across. Like, he's very business minded. He's a great lawyer, but he's also a great business person. And he recognized very quickly that, wow, this is the new way. And the challenges he brought up, and he said it was kind of a blind spot. They didn't see it for a few months in, was the social element, right? Which we all know. We've all talked about it. It's in the media. Everybody's aware of it. He said, lawyers are social. I said, well, humans are social.
Yeah.
We like to be with each other and get the energy. And he said, that was the biggest thing we had to overcome. And I said, how'd you overcome it? He said, by reaching out consistently and whenever and wherever possible, meeting with staff, having get-togethers with the staff, and reaching out and seeing clients. And of course, that depends on the restrictions of the day, right? Wherever you are, which region you are. But he said that's how they overcome it. It is really tackling that social element and getting out there. Now, a couple tips that I have. First one is getting over the fear of doing it, right? Because it's different. And lawyers are pretty risk averse in the scheme of things. But with technology being the way it is, to communication, systems, for a lot of, not everyone, not every law practice, but for definitely the larger firms, no. They're doing more of the hybrid thing. But if you're in solo practice or you're the owner of a small firm like this gentleman is, there's really no excuse. If you want to go virtual, there's no excuse. There's help out there. Your overhead costs are going to go way down. Your happiness level is going to go way up. so is the happiness level of your clients and your staff. The other tip I have, this may be harder, is to let go a little of the control and learn to trust. If you've hired the right people, you have to trust that they're going to do the work. And I know that for some lawyers is hard to do. But again, if you've hired the right people, it doesn't matter where the work's getting done, as long as it's getting done. And I worked with a lot of lawyers in 2020 who were faced with working from home for the first time. And one of them, a senior partner who I'll refer to later on, he says to me, you know what, I really like this. I mean, you know, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, that's not always true. This particular senior partner was loving working from home. He said, Gary, I'm more productive. I don't have all the interruptions. You know, when I take a break, I can go take care of something around the house. So am I a fan of virtual? Well, Nick, I'm talking to you from Mexico right now, right? And one of my other clients is saying, oh my God, it's my dream to work from Mexico. And I said to her, let's replace the word dream with goal, put a plan in place and make it happen. Over the years, I've had several clients work from all over, right? If you're licensed in one state, you can be working from pretty much anywhere, serving those clients in that state. And the same in Canada. If you're licensed in one province, you can be working from that, licensed in that province and working from the Caribbean. I've had many clients over the years do this before COVID. COVID's just kind of like, again, with all these things that we're talking about today, Nick, COVID has kind of kicked everything in the.
Yeah, understood. And so I want to continue this conversation because we're talking about tackling the fear and really like embracing change. And this is something, and I had the same issue when we switched to virtual here, that and especially like as I've sort of risen in the ranks in my career is I have to delegate things that I used to do myself that I know that I'm good at. You know, this is what got me to where I am. I like to do it. I have a proven history of execution, all of that. But if you've hired the right people, you have to trust that they're gonna do it. I just introduced you to a new guy that I hired last week.
Tony, yeah.
Tony, he's a great guy. And I've already placed a lot of trust in him that he's gonna do the job that I hired him to do.
Well, Nick, you bring it up, so I'll take it further. I quoted, this book is my third book, by the way, but I've quoted Jim Collins from Good to Great in every book. And he says, first of all, get the right people on the bus and get them in the right seats. Hire the right people and get them in the right roles. You do that, you're 90% of the way there.
Exactly. And so what my problem was is that my mindset had not shifted. I hadn't really adopted this mindset of, well, I'm going to trust my people to do the things that I've trained them and helped them and empowered them to do and learn. Or, you know, I haven't taken up the mindset yet that I'm now responsible for a lot of other things because I'm expanding my role, I'm expanding my horizon and my experience. And that's why I love how you covered in your book that one of the most important things is mindset. So I want to talk about it, right? Why is mindset such a point of emphasis in your teachings? And how have you seen mindset impact the day-to-day lives of the attorneys that you've worked with?
Okay, wow. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, there's a lot. We could spend hours talking about it, but first, let me go back to that story about that lawyer that took that leap of faith, right? And leaves comfortable, no reason to leave whatsoever. Good income, good surroundings, good people, but she had the mindset that she could do something greater, bigger. She wanted the challenge. So that's one thing. I've always maintained that attitude or mindset is at least worth 95% of everything, if not more. Like I just use the 95 arbitrarily, but pick a number above 95 if you like. I also always use the analogy of an Olympian athlete. And of course, it's timely because the Olympics are on right now. But I've used that for many, many years. Or if you're into performing arts, you could look at a ballerina or a vocal artist. The mindset, the determination, the focus, the unrelentless desire to succeed. That's amazing. I always bring up Olympic athletes because I think to myself, wow, how many hours are you training, but how much are you working on this? Because it all starts with this. Everything starts with this. If you don't have the right mindset, it's going to be pretty tough for you to succeed. And during COVID, we're all brought down, like, you know, the collective energy or the collective, I can't think of the word off the top of my head, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I wanted, chapter 1 is getting into the ultimate mindset, because I don't think there's been anything spoken about that before in the legal industry. It's like all law. And it's like, well, the clients I've worked with over the years have always demonstrated that mindset's number one. It doesn't matter how experienced they are, what practice area they are, how many years in the profession, it always comes back to mindset. And I have to tell you the story. I read this article years ago. It's got to be at least 12 years ago, 13 years ago. This one very large firm in the US, their hiring practice, their HR practice, was they skipped over the top tier law schools and they skipped over A students. What they found more often than not, and I'm not saying this, like I'm just telling you a story, right, outside. I'm not saying this is absolutely true, but I have found it to be true in my own career. They found that the B students from the second or third tier law schools were often working to put themselves through law school. So not only were they studying, they were working. And this showed work ethic, determination, attitude, which all points to mindset. And when they hired them, they were proven right. And I love that story. You know, I just, you know, think positive. Now, it's not always easy. And so chapter 2 is about self-care. So it's, you know, mindset. It's one thing to say, oh, be positive, you know, like, no, it doesn't always happen like that. So I offer some tips on how to create the ultimate mindset, understanding yourself as a person, the way you think, and some self-care tips that will help you, you know, stay positive. And again, I go back to, people are challenged and stressed out max in the legal industry far before COVID came along, right? And so nothing's new, it's just exasperated.
We will be right back with the show after this short message.
Who doesn't want to be a successful attorney with a busy practice, but still have that life? Having those lunch breaks, playing golf, going on vacation. Answering Legal allows you to. My name is Laura Pfeiffer Badaloro. I'm an attorney, founding member of the Badaloro Law Group. Our headquarters is in Brooklyn, but we represent people all over the state of New York. The process of getting started with Answering Legal couldn't have been easier. It was so seamless. They're so efficient. The message will pop up on my phone. It'll pop up in my email. Answering Legal allows me to have a personal life, a more balanced life, and it also helps me to be a better attorney. It saves time. It helps you grow your practice without you even realizing it. Getting started with Answering Legal, it's the best thing that we've ever done. It pays off in spades. It's been amazing. I couldn't live without them, really.
Mindset, sure, you can't quantify it, but when you see it, you recognize it immediately. And I like that tactic of kind of reverse engineering. Where do I look for the people who've got the best mindset, who are the best workers? Not necessarily.
I love reverse engineering, and I'm not an engineer.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm not an engineer either.
When I'm working with clients, I know we're off topic a little bit, but I get them to look ahead. Ultimate, what's your vision? What do you want to create? Oh, I never thought of that. Yes, that's the point why I'm asking you now. Where do you want to get to? No restrictions, no editing. No one's telling you can't. No one's saying it can't be done. What do you want to get to? And we start from there and we reverse engineer.
Yep. You know what I love about lawyer coaches? I have a few good relationships with your kind, you know. And
Kind. I've never been referred to that way before.
oh well, I'm a strange guy. I tell most podcast guests that, so I apologize for whatever comes out of my
No
mouth.
problem.
But so I know a lot of successful attorneys who are not the most entrepreneurial minds, and admittedly myself, I'm not the most entrepreneurial person. I'm a creative type. I'm more of like an integrator where I can see the big picture and execute and get things done and but I don't have that drive to like go out there and stake my claim and do all that stuff. But if you do have that desire, but you also are more like me and you don't have that entrepreneurial spirit, I think having someone guide you is like having a boss. Like you're the boss, in my opinion, right? You're the integrator for a lot of attorneys out there who might not be the most entrepreneurial spirits. And especially because it's really not even encouraged in law school, you know.
No.
It's do this, learn the actual law, take the test, and then we'll send you on your way. We got a good acceptance rate at big law, or we got a good acceptance rate, you know. We got connections here. And that's all well and good for the people who want to do that, but that's not necessarily our audience today. So I want to talk about some other advice that you've had for attorneys during this time, which is for me near and dear to my heart. And it, like you said before, it's been exacerbated by COVID, but interacting with clients, because it's no longer like you said, we got rid of the bricks and the mortar, and we got rid of. Thank you very much. That's my dog.
Nice. What's his or her name?
His name is Alfie, and he needs to. Alfie, come on, bro.
My God, our first family dog's name was Alfie.
Get out of here.
I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
Black lab mixed mutt, something like that.
Yeah, he's a mixed nervous mutt, and he just wants to let everybody know that he's nervous.
Well, Nick, let me tell you about entrepreneurs and lawyers. My first client was a very successful partner at a very large firm. Okay. And he said he had looked at 3 people. He wanted coaching or consulting. He wasn't sure what, because back in the day, the word coach really wasn't used very much. And he said, you know why I chose you, Gary? I know how to be a lawyer. You've got the entrepreneurial drive. I want that. And the second quote I want to give you is working with a senior partner, leaving an international firm to go out on his own and create his own law firm in 2020. And we're on a call and he goes, Gary, how come the most successful lawyers don't always make the most successful business people? We both had a laugh about that. And there's no judgment whatsoever here, Nick. We're all different, right? If we were all the same, how would we have different professions, right? We'd all be doing the same thing. I don't know how that would work. You know, lawyers aren't typically, again, this is not across the board 100%, but lawyers are not typically built for entrepreneurialism. And it comes down to, there's a little bit of psychology here, right brain versus left brain, right? The right brain, which you are very equipped with, is the creative side, right? The intuitive side, the building side, and that points to entrepreneurialism, okay? Part of it, okay? The left brain is very analytical, critical thinking, which obviously points to the lawyer's side. I mean, lawyers couldn't do the job without that very healthy left brain. And while I was talking about Olympians, lawyers' left brain has had Olympian level training and practice. And the right brain has been a couch potato binging on Netflix. So what I do is I get them off the couch and we start training and get them on a better diet. I'm kidding. I'm just using it as a metaphor, but it's all learnable. It's all learnable. It's just that if you look at the course of a lawyer's or attorney's career path, their training, their education, their first job, their second job, everything that's rewarded, it doesn't, nothing supports the right brain. Nothing supports, like you say, in law school, right? Nothing supports that entrepreneurial side. So what I would do with my clients, it doesn't matter what program it is I help them stretch that or improve that, exercise that right brain. That's what it comes down to. And again, no judgment. I'm not going to be a lawyer, right? I don't have that analytical, critical thinking stress. I'm an entrepreneur. I go, let's do this. Well, how are you going to do it? I don't know yet. I just thought of it, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm not going to sit there and go, it can't happen. It won't happen. This is why it can't happen and why it won't happen. We think differently, and that's why we need to help each other, right? And we need to support each other. And I guess that's why that friend of the candidate said, you should be working with lawyers, right?
I think that guy had some real forethought or foresight rather, because it sounds to me like you've helped a great many attorneys get to where they need to be. And so I have this question for you, which the way that we're interacting right now, right, is new. It's almost like so I watch a lot of podcasts, and I never used to watch podcasts or listen to podcasts with guests, or maybe back in the day it was normal to like call into a radio show and be a guest, right? And it was low quality and it was just a segment on a show. Most people are always in the same room, and so it was with law firms. So I'm curious what your advice has been for attorneys during this time, really post COVID, on maintaining a high level of client service, even though they can't have that sort of face-to-face interaction.
Well, look, if we go back to the story about that entrepreneurial lawyer that went virtual, he's got the answer for that. It's make it more effort. Get out there and get in front of your clients, not billing them for it, simply because you want to show that you care. You're showing compassion. Again, depending on your area restrictions and all that, if you're not able to do it face to face, then get on the phone and do it regularly. Sometimes attorneys miss the fact that there's so much about this relationship, the client relationship, that is about likability and humanity. It's not just about the service. There's a million lawyers out there. Well, there's way more than that. So it comes down to, it always has, and again, COVID exacerbates everything. It always comes down to the client relationship and going above and beyond and reaching out. Just calling them up out of the blue, or calling them and saying, hey, can I drop by the office on Tuesday and take them to lunch? Go and show up at their office. Don't have them come to yours. Don't charge for it. This is just part of the relationship. And I've actually been saying that for years, Nick, far before COVID hit. But now COVID just makes every one of these strategies, it just makes it more important than ever.
I love the idea of dropping by, and this happened to me before COVID too. Is I had my mortgage broker just dropped by my office one day to like deliver me some papers. I'm like, why did you come by? Oh, well, we're going out for coffee. I was like, oh, okay, get in the car. We're going for coffee. And that made a big deal because I've sent that guy a good deal of business. Now
it makes a difference.
Yeah.
You stand out. We're in service, right? I'm in service. We're in service. So serve. It really comes down to that. I mean, I'm assuming when a client or a prospect calls me up, I'm assuming you know how to be a lawyer. I've never been a lawyer, and I'm not going to teach you how to be a lawyer, right? I'll leave that up to the education, your mentors, your higher management, your partners. But I'm going to teach you about service.
So speaking of service, and because I think the same approach needs to be had in order to be successful at it. But I want to talk about marketing and some of the marketing tactics tactics that you've seen work well for attorneys these past few years? Wow, what a mouthful. Not for most people, just for me. And what are the strategies that you've seen sort of get phased out as well?
Well, first of all, and I say this in the book, the fundamentals of marketing have not changed because of COVID. It's how we do it that's changed. Okay. So the fundamentals of marketing are getting in front of your target market, right? Raising your profile, making sure people know you're there, what you do. And the strategies that I've always advised my clients to be the most effective, I've called it educational marketing for about 14 years. And that's doing what we're doing, webinars, in-person workshops, getting articles out there, educating your target market, or even your clients or your referral sources, because they're all different sources of business. The beauty of this is, Nick, attorneys often shy away at the thought of sales. I've never believed in marketing as sales in the legal industry. It's not pushing, it's not, the used car salesman trying to push you something that you don't need. It's making the connection, right? So that fundamental has not changed. Obviously, in-person workshops have been greatly diminished. I mean, I just gave my first did my first live retreat in November. It's the first one in over 2 years, right? But we've got Zoom, we've got WebEx, we've got Google Meets, we've got all these technologies. So the way we do it has been tweaked a little bit, but what we should be doing has not. And I've always maintained, if all you ever did is write and get published and put on workshops in front of target audience, current clients to go deeper within their client and referral sources, you will succeed. Now, you ask me, what do I think is obsolete? Okay, let me get my crystal ball here. One thing I think, at least in the short term, is these large, massively expensive client events. Maybe they'll come back. They're definitely not coming back anytime soon. Whether there's restrictions or not, there's a lot of people still out there very leery of gathering in a large group of people. And I can't see a large group of people in suits in a closed environment wearing masks, eating hors d'oeuvres and drinking cocktails. I can't see it. Another area that I think will probably be re-examined, maybe not obsolete, are the sporting events and golfing. These are very expensive events and take a lot of time. And we all know time is money. So I think people are rethinking everything. I mean, literally everything, right?
I've never been to a golf outing, like a business golf outing, but you just reminded me. I'm gonna book a tea time for this weekend. I want to talk about and really we're circling back to this too. And this is a timely topic for me, as I just hired a new employee. But I want to talk about hiring new employees and keeping great employees in place. And it's a hot button issue because we've had what was it called, the Great Resignation,
Yeah.
or job hopping, and a lot of people, rightfully so, demanding better pay for more positions, and so there's been a lot of opportunity, but there's also been sort of a mismatch of opportunity. So in my purview, there's never been a more important time to focus on your hiring and keep, and retention is the word, right? So I'm going to open the floor to you. What would you say are some of the biggest hiring, HR management, all of those things? What are some of the biggest challenges that law firms are facing in terms of that?
Well, ironically, Nick, HR has become, over the last 3 or 4 years, another area that I've focused on a lot. I happen to love it, and a lot of my clients hate it. It's challenging. I've always said the most difficult part of a business is the people part, right? It's not getting the office, or if you have an office. It's not the office furniture. It's not the communication. It's the people, because we're all different. So you brought up the Great Resignation. I'm glad you did. Let's look at why this happened. In any major event, and you know why I know this is because I'm a student of history, but more importantly, because I've worked with family law lawyers since the beginning of my career. And there's certain times of the year where their business goes through the roof. And that's because people stop and reflect. And what COVID did is it stopped everyone in their tracks, even people who normally don't reflect, okay? And people were like, what's going on, personally and professionally? So that's why it happened, just to be clear. You brought up HR challenges. I see opportunities, because I see if you get it right, you're getting the creme de la creme of talent, okay? And that's what I'm always telling my clients. There's so much talent out there. They may not be across the street. They could be across town or across the state or even another state. But it's about the talent again. So the first thing I'm going to say is be flexible to the working conditions. I mean, I said this, I had a client, a boutique firm who got this right, like literally 14 years ago. They allowed people to work from home. They allowed people to be on contract. And this gave them such a huge expanded talent pool. It was incredible, right? And even that lawyer I talked to you about that went completely virtual, he said to me, he goes, you know what this has done? Is this completely has expanded our talent pool 10-fold, 20-fold, 50-fold. And so I always try to look at the opportunity first, because that's like the carrot. Before we look at, oh, this sucks and this is challenging, I was like, okay, let's look at what's possible with this now, right? So create a flexible working environment. Ask your people what they need and what they want. To the best of your ability, give it to them. And if you can't, explain why, have a discussion, and come to some compromise. Like, collaborate with your people. Do not take the one-size-fits-all approach. You're not going to get away with it. You used to, but you're not going to get away with it anymore. We see it every day. That's what's happening. People are like going, why am I here? Another point, Nick, and this is not new. Money is almost never at the top of the motivating scale. And now more than ever, it's lower, 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 lower. Yes, some people will jump the pace. I mean, if you're not paying your people well, that's one thing. But if you already are and they get an offer and it's like way more than you're willing to, then they're motivated by money. And that's the only thing, but they're the minority. Most people now are motivated by their values. Are their values aligned with your values? So here's what you don't do. Don't worry about the people who've already left. They're gone. Focus on the people who've stayed. Find out why they've stayed. What's keeping them there? What matters to them? Because that's what you're looking for, is more of them. You don't want more people that are going to leave, right? So, I mean, I love this. I find HR fascinating, not only because it's challenging, and I always love a challenge, but it's like putting a puzzle together. And you know how the different pieces have different shapes? Well, we as humans want to put all these pieces together in the wrong, like the square into the circle or the circle into the square. We can't do that. This takes extra effort, but the payoff is incredible when you get this right. So yes, it's very challenging. HR, I mean, when I'm working with bigger firms, when I get a chance to talk to their HR director, we have a hoot, a conversation, because most often it's a female in that role, and she and I will laugh and cry. Well, she'll cry. I'm not doing it full time, but they are challenged to the max. And of course, all these things we're talking about are much harder in the larger firms, but not impossible. In the smaller firms, I don't see any excuse. I really don't. Like, I use this firm owner that I talked about, and now again, in addition to being entrepreneurial, he's also a hell of a good guy, and he loves to mentor. So that's another thing. Once you get them on board, you need to give them, like, if we're talking lawyers want to be lawyers. Lawyers want a lawyer. They don't want to be stuck in the back room, right? Doing research for their entire career. They want to get out there and meet with clients and get client facing. I want to give you an example too, and this is a larger firm. I'm working with a senior partner in, well, the East Coast, let's say, and he's actually got some really great instincts. And he's come to the conclusion, with a little bit of guidance, but I can't take credit for all of it. For sure I can't. And what he's doing is he's actually using the lower level work as a training ground for the associates for client management. I'm like, what? Of course, it's a great training ground for their legal skills, but he's thinking ahead. He's thinking beyond that to when they are managing the client. So it's like so much more can be done in HR. And again, we go back to the common theme. COVID has been the catalyst, right?
Actually, I shouldn't say I feel bad, but I understand the plight, I'll say, of HR professionals.
Oh, I do
because
too. I do too. Because they know if we're looking at the bigger firms, they know what needs to be done.
Yeah.
They're just often restricted.
I was just gonna say there's
Yeah.
so many constraints on HR people.
That's
um,
right.
and for good reason, right? I'm not here to say that like the rules and diversity and inclusion and treating people fairly and equal opportunity is not a good thing, but
I don't think these things are at odds with each other.
no.
I think they're all in the same category. I just mean that when I mean restrictions, I mean the old school mentality,
Mhm.
right? And usually it's the upper echelon of partnership. That's what I'm talking about, restrictions. That's why I'm saying the smaller firms have way more opportunity to thrive. I mean, just let's look at this for a minute. All these associates, all this talent running away from the big firms. Look at your talent pool. Let them work from home. Oh my God. Anyway, get the right people, treat them well, mentor them, train them, pay them well, recognize their value, recognize their talent, give them a path forward. They're all simple things, not easy to execute on, but they're all simple things.
I think it was a seminar that I saw a while ago from Gary Vaynerchuk, and he was talking about um, how to treat your best employee, but it was under the guise of why you might have to fire your best employee or your highest performing if the guy was somehow problematic. But he gets into treating people differently, because you need to have a conversation with your employees about what's important to them, and then you work on a plan, like you said, to get it to them. Or if you really can't, for whatever reason, I can't imagine, but he spoke to one guy working at his business and was like, what's most important to you? And he said, my family. And so he gave that guy additional time off, or he let him work, less hours in the week. What's important to this other person was prestige. He really wanted a title, so he got a title promotion and he was in charge of more things.
And another person then would be a raise, a salary raise.
What if the person says, I want to buy a fancy new watch? Okay, sure. Here's a bonus. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a way to appeal to all of the different types of personalities that work for you, aside from, and this even goes back to what you said with people who don't care about money. Some people at the end of the year, they don't care so much about what the bonus was, so much as they care about, this is the path that you're on for partnership track.
Yeah.
Or this is where you're at, or this is what I'm grooming you to do. This is your next responsibility. Or, hey, why don't you take the next couple of weeks off and stay at home with your family? I know you're having.
Well, and it's not that hard to do. Like that conversation does not take that long, right? And we're mostly talking with smaller firms, right? So we're not talking hundreds, right? It's just, I guess what it comes down to is knowing the approach, right? It's not like, because most of the small firm owners I know, they want to do well by their employees. It's not like they're going out of their way to make them unhappy. They just don't know. Again, not taught in law school. And the list goes on.
Yep. So I want to talk about your program, the OnTrac coaching program. and the services you provide. Can you tell me more about the program itself, where people can find it, what do you provide? Elevator pitch
Sure.
me, or longer than that, really. But
Well, it all began with business development and marketing in the early days. And in the early days, I was working primarily, actually exclusively, with larger firms. So it was the management of the firm that would hire me to work with their associates and partners. And in the coming years, in the next coming years, more and more solo practice lawyers and small firm owners reached out to me. And so the diversity of my learning was greatly expanded beyond marketing and business development. So we're talking about HR, leadership, practice management, pretty much all the challenges that law firms face under the guise of business, right? And everything that's not taught at law school. So I've developed beyond business development. There's a practice management program. There's a leadership program. There's a transition program when you're moving from one firm to another, or one office across the country to another office. And then there's the managing partner program. And they're all designed specifically for specific needs within a firm or solo practice.
awesome.
Someone asked me a few months ago, do you have a sweet spot? I like all of them, but I would have to say the sweet spot would be the small firm owner, because then we're kindred spirits. That person is an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. We'll be speaking the same language right out of the gate. But I like all the programs. I love working with the babies, we call them, right? And because first of all, they're so open to receiving advice and support. But I like all of the clients that I work with.
Yeah, it's just definitely easier to affect change. I like to say that when the ship is smaller, it's easier to steer.
Well, I could be working with a partner at a huge firm, and that mandate is awesome, right? Our relationship, what that person will learn and grow from, is great. But when I'm working with an owner of a small firm, I'm in there and I'm working with the owner on the big picture. So the impact is greater for me. The touch points that I have the opportunity to work on, it's fascinating. I mean, I'm never, like lawyers, my learning never stops, right? Every day I'm learning from a new client. I'm learning from a new prospect even. I love it.
It's awesome. So I also want to talk to you about the OnTrac Practice Builder app. So can you tell me and the audience what the app does, and why the app could end up being a helpful tool for our attorney listeners?
Well, Nick, I have to tell you, it's almost like my baby. I remember approaching a tech person, a colleague of mine, about 15 years ago. And this is before educational apps became the norm, right? And he goes, what? An app for that? And I'm like, yeah. So this has been something in the works for literally about 15 years. And finally, we launched it last fall. So that's when I say it's my baby. Basically, the app follows the same process I follow with my clients one-on-one. It's a combination of my practice management, business development, and leadership coaching programs. As you may know, a lot of lawyers are self-learners. They would prefer to learn on their own pace, and not have an outside coach or consultant. It could be a trust issue, could be other issues. So this is kind of a good hybrid, because they can learn on their own, but they're being guided. There's self-assessments, there's tip sheets, and all this stuff is emailed back to them directly. I never see it unless they wanted to contact me outside of the app. So it's all confidential. It covers everything that we talked about today. So mindset, self-care, all the way through to leadership, HR. Basically, it's the A to Z of how to run a practice or firm, and which gives you a roadmap if you're going out on your own as well. So this is what we want to build. You know, these are the things. It's not the back end stuff. It's the more lawyer forward stuff, the people part, right, of the business. But it's basically an A to Z. And to my knowledge, and still to this day, I still don't believe there's anything else like it on the market. And I've designed it so that it's an alternative to one-on-one coaching. It's an alternative to the book. It's just another way lawyers can learn the business of law.
Yeah, I can confidently
And
say
you asked where are these programs? Everything is on track without a K, coach.com.
So everybody who's listening / watching, we will have all of the links to Gary's resources app, where you can join the OnTrac coaching program, listed in the description. So Gary, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me on the show today, and a special thank you to all of our listeners. We hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we will be back with another episode of Everything Except the Law soon. Be sure to check out previous episodes of our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and the Answering Legal YouTube channel. See you next time, everyone.
Thank you, Nick.